Hello, what is going on, dudes? My name is 13 and welcome to a rambling review, the show where I talk about games that my friends have not played, so I don't have anyone to talk to and I want to talk about the game. And the rambling comes from the fact that I don't have a script and I talk off the cuff because I have ADHD and my attention jumps from different things. In the past, I have done games that I really liked and a couple of them that were underrated and I hadn't really seen anyone talk about, but today I'm going to be talking about a game that, 15 years ago probably was like super talked about, being Final Fantasy XIII. Truth be told, I didn't really get into the Final Fantasy series until I played a little bit of 15, inspired by Nay Wants to Battle's song that was inspired by that game, and I played an episode of 15. There's a video on the channel if you want to go watch that. That was many years ago. And then I fell head over heels in love with the 7 Remake trilogy and Final Fantasy XVI, and since then I've been trying to play some other Final Fantasy games and to see how kind of things went. Even though I never got into the Final Fantasy series until I was much older, I had always heard about some things about Final Fantasy XIII and how it was bad and whatever, and I really wanted to see why it was the black sheep of the franchise. And then also, why there's 3 of them, 13, 13-2, and then Lightning Returns, which is then also subtitled Final Fantasy 13. Even though it really is like it's like 13-3, realistically. Anyway, I don't know why they made 3 games, but I'm interested to figure that out. As of now, I've only played the first one. With that being said, let's start by talking about this game. So, funny enough, I actually did this recording like a couple weeks ago, as of actually doing this recording, after I rage quit, because I want to talk about the gameplay, because the gameplay is the reason that I rage quit. So the gameplay is super weird. They basically took what they had for Final Fantasy XII and then made it worse, because it's like, what I'd basically describe it as like an overarching context to it is an MMO combat style, where basically what you do is you select your actions and then the game performs them for you. You're not specifically doing them, which in a lot of JRPGs, that's kind of what you're doing anyway, but it's turn-based and you have your things in your specific order and you can pick and basically get to choose what all your party does, because that's what you would do in a lot of previous Final Fantasies and even more modern JRPGs like Persona, which I absolutely love if you've seen this series before. But the problem is that the combat system is just bad. It's just flat out bad. Now, there's a lot of ideas that they had with this, and they kind of almost had it. But my biggest gripe with the game, in the gameplay and the battle mechanics, is that you cannot move your character on the battlefield. So, if you are fighting some random enemy. Here's the thing. I played the entire game on easy mode because I don't play these games to have this super difficult challenge and whatnot, right? I do the same thing in Persona games because a lot of times you will have bosses that are just damage sponges. You can have a really creative idea to get past it and like do it whatever, but it just takes a shitload of damage and then deals a shitload of damage to you, and that's where the difficulty comes from. And that's not fun. I'm talking about Persona because I'm trying to compare it and contextualize it in a way. Like, for me, the thing about Persona that's fun is everything outside of the actual gameplay part. The gameplay can be enjoyable, but I tend to spend one in-game night just completing the entirety of the gameplay that I can do in order to spend and maximize the amount of time that I can spend with the other characters in the game and whatever, right? So, that being said, we go back to the Final Fantasy game. I started on normal mode, and then I played a little bit of it, and I did not like the battle mechanics. I'm like, okay, well, let me play on easy mode so I can just breeze through this so I can experience the story. Well, there were multiple times I had to retry bosses on easy mode because they would just pull out a random attack that would do all of the main character that you were playing at that time's health all at once. And I'd be like, well, I can't do anything about that. I can't dodge it. It's not like I can pick a different ability to do it, right? Because a lot of times it was specifically with Vanille and Saz and then Hope and Lightning, so none of those characters have the Sentinel role, which is the role where basically the person acts as a shield. And that is their goal. They are just there to be the tank. And you can set that up in paradigms, but the only 2 that get that are the 2 that you do not get to play as for the majority of the game, being Snow and Fang, which you get far later in the game. And so you have these relatively squishy characters that you cannot control to get out of the way of these damages. And on easy mode, there were multiple bosses I had to try over and over and over again. And in Chapter 6, after 10 hours of playing, it was Vanille and Saz, and they were in that whatever area. I don't remember exactly what it is. I mean, I have the clip of me getting so mad because I could not do anything. I would have to spam potions because I could not, because of how long the ATB gauge takes to fill up. And at that point, you don't have the items that give you that ATB boost. You don't get those until later. But I rage quit after that because I was so fucking angry. I had to retry the boss fight 10 times, and then I still could not beat it. Playing on easy mode. And being unable to do enough damage to stun these because there are two of the enemies and they attack at staggered times, and then they focus Vanille, who is far and away the most fragile of the two. Sometimes they would just focus Saz, and then I'd have to pick him up because he's the one doing most of the damage in this case. And I'm trying to keep us both alive, but I can't do that because things take so long to charge up, and it was just annoying. It was just incredibly aggravating because there's not much I could do. It's not like, oh, I can just click hit the B button and dodge out of the way of the attack and be able to, keep afloat and whatever. So basically the battle mechanics are just not fun. They're, even when it gets later on in the game, there's just not enough strategy in it to make it more interesting. Even in MMOs, you can move where your character is. Even though you don't do your auto attacks, it does your auto attacks for you. Like, the battles themselves are completely pointless because you don't even get the ability to do any upgrades until Chapter 2, technically. Once you get all of the magic parts, which come with being turned into Lassie, and that's a whole can of worms unto itself. It's the whole story in the Lassie bullshit. But anyways, the two bosses that I remember most vividly are the Chapter 6 boss, which was fucking garbage and made me rage quit, and then the Chapter 3 boss, where I literally got insta-killed immediately. Despite even doing what the tutorial told me, I just got instantly killed, and I did not have the ability to keep myself alive, because at that point we don't have the ATB boosting things, and it's so much harder to heal both of us at the same time, and spamming potions takes a long time, and we didn't even have the item to boost the effectiveness of potions because I found that with Saz later, and there's just no skill expression in the combat whatsoever. It's completely mindless. The battle system in this game is press A simulator, and that's basically all it is. Whether or not you select which attacks you want to use, or you let the auto-generated one pick the best ones based on the weakness of the enemy you're fighting. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing. That was the reason I rage quit, because I'm like, well, I kind of want to see what's going on, because the story itself makes no sense. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I mean, they just kind of handled that poorly. This is just an anecdote, but based on the ending, I don't know how the fuck they came up with 2 sequels for it. But anyways, we're going to move on. Not really. We're going to stick within the gameplay aspect of it. The majority of the game are linear hallways chock full of battles. The boring, repetitive, annoying battles that do nothing but pad the game's length. That is the biggest thing that they tried to do. Now, I think I remember back in the day seeing some things about, like, people were really mad that it wasn't actually an open world, because basically in the first part of Chapter 11, there is technically an open world where you're on Pulse, which is Earth itself, or their Earth, their planet, compared to being on the planet city that is in the sky being Cocoon. But you were on Pulse, and you get to explore around. There are a bunch of, like, little side missions, which all amount to basically fulfilling the Seath, their failed focuses, which is basically just kill shit. And it's not like you can do all of them at once. You have to find the stones, you have to activate the mission. You can only activate one at a time. Then you have to go kill the thing, then you have to go find another one, and just on repeat. So I didn't even bother doing those because that's not fun. Even then, you get to the mission marker in Chapter 11, and then you're right back on the straight and narrow. You cannot veer from your path. And my question is, I marked this down somewhere in my script, that why did they not have, I say script, but I just have a bunch of notes on my phone. Funny enough, I haven't looked at it yet. My phone's off next to me. I've just been going off because I remembered exactly what I wanted to say on gameplay. They should have just had a top-down camera you know, because there's no reason to have a third-person camera, because the third-person camera fucking sucks, not to mention. It's just, you basically have us go down a straight path. It'd be far easier to see things if we were, you know, from a different angle, and then you just change the angle based on cutscenes or something like that, you know, like they did with Final Fantasy VII 20 years ago or whatever. I completely forgot to mention that when I rage quit after the Chapter 6 boss, I started using cheats. There might be a person or two who gets mad at me for, like, you know, using cheats or whatever, but I'm going to admit it, because here's the thing. Like, the gameplay, the combat was not fair, and it was not fun. So it was like, I'm gonna fucking cheat my way through this, because if I'm gonna beat this game, this is the only way I'm going to be able to do it. So basically, I used cheat engine to give myself like max items in order to max upgrade all my weapons, and then basically max Crystarium points, so I could upgrade to the max every single time I got the opportunity to, and so I wouldn't just insta die to bosses, because that's fucking horseshit, especially on easy mode. I legitimately was so angry, and I rage quit. And I recorded a 51-minute recording of me like doing this entire video after the rage quit, because I'm like, I don't want to play this game. And then I figured out how to use cheat engine, and I found a cheat list thing, and I was able to use it and to make things work so I could beat this damn game, because I wanted to beat it. I put in enough time, and I feel guilty when I don't finish games. I thought it apt to mention, because especially as I got later on in the game, it was more and more, I was more and more glad that I did that. There was a boss in Chapter 12 where it was so ridiculously annoying, because oh my god. Okay, so I'll explain it real quick, because I don't know if I took a clip of it, but it's not a big deal. It's the guy with the silver hair and the black robe, which I talk about a little bit later in the character section. I don't remember his name. He's literally not important at all. Roche, maybe, who was in a mech, and then we beat up the mech the first time, and then he retreats. And then we continue on, and then right at the end of Chapter 12, we once again find him, we run into him again. And then that battle is far more annoying, because it takes a lot more to actually do damage. He's an insane bullet sponge. Like, he takes so much damage and doesn't do anything. And then he's basically has resistances to all types of magic, but you have to use the magic to boost the stagger bar enough. Then you have to switch back to commando in order to do actual damage to him. And even then, it takes a long ass time. And then he'll randomly do this maneuver, whatever, where he changes form or something like that, but not really, at about 66% health, and then fully heals himself again. I'm like, okay, fuck this. So I turn on insta-kill. I'm like, I'm done with this fight. So I turned it on, and then I turned it off after that, because I'm like, I don't need it. Probably won't need it until maybe the final boss or something like that. And then somehow it like glitched, and it kept insta-kill on for the rest of the game. And I'm like, you know what? This is fine, because I can finish it tonight. And I finished it in the next hour instead of it taking 5 more hours. So anyway, the gameplay is just not fun. The only cool battle mechanic, I'd say, is the Eidolon battles, which they call them Eidolon in the game, which is fucking stupid, because that pronunciation doesn't make sense. Eidolon, which is like the name they call them in Final Fantasy XVI. Those are kind of cool. You don't really have battles themselves. It's basically you are just standing one-on-one with the enemy in that case, and you press your input and you do your thing. That's about it. The enemy doesn't attack back. There are a couple times where that is actually super useful. Like, there's a technical boss later on in the game at the beginning of Chapter 12 where basically I don't know if I have a clip of it, but basically you start the battle with the Eidolon summon, and basically you just want to kill it as the Eidolon, because fighting it is so fucking annoying. Because the first time I accidentally hit Gestalt mode, or Gestalt, I don't know, doesn't matter. I accidentally hit that button. I have a clip of that part. I do remember that. I accidentally hit that button, and so I used Zangetsu, and it didn't do enough damage, and then I could not kill it, so I'm just like, fuck it, we're gonna retry. That, and also it changed my battle party, so my paradigms got switched up. Paradigms, that's another thing. I should actually mention that. So basically throughout the game you have these paradigms, and based on your battle party you can adjust the paradigms, whether or not you have someone on commando, which is physical attacks, and then non-elemental magic damage being ruin, or you have Ravager, which are all basically magic. Medic is healing, Saboteur weakens enemies, and Synergist boosts your party. However, with just 3 members, it's kind of weird because you kind of need multiple people attacking to boost stagger bars. And so it kind of just ends up being inefficient to realistically use Saboteur and Synergist. I never really found a good use for those. It was more effective to have Ravager Medic or Commando Ravager or something like that, just doing more damage to boost the stagger bars, and then switching to a Medic class when I needed it, because the debuffs don't last that long anyway, and they don't make that much of a difference to bother, in my opinion. Anyway, the biggest issue with that is that it doesn't save your paradigm. So if you swap up your battle team, and let's say you're going with Lightning, Snow, and Vanille, and then you decide you want to change it up and you pick a different leader, say Fang, and then you add Hope and Saw. So let's just say you swap the 3 entirely, and then you set up those your paradigms for those guys. But then you decide a little bit later, I want to go back to the team that I had. So you bring in Lightning as your leader with Vanille and Saws. Then you have to do your paradigms over again. And there was a couple times I didn't realize this, and so I'm like, what the fuck is these paradigms? Because it would randomly construct ones that made no sense. Like, once you get the ability to give everybody every rank, it would just randomly make paradigms with the level 1s, and I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. The level 1s are strictly inferior to their level 3. Put them in their expertise, because you can't upgrade them past level 2 until you beat the game anyway, for the extra ones that they get. And it's like, why would you do that? Why would you not just save the ones that I already had? I already made them. It should not be that hard, right? I should also mention that you don't get to control what your party members do. You can set up their paradigms and have them specifically do the specific things. So if like you've set them up with Ravager, they will auto do the most efficient magic attacks and whatever, which, you know, kind of works. But it's also annoying because I would like to be able to tell them what to do, in a sense. I mean, for this game, I guess it didn't make as much sense as, like, you know, Final Fantasy VII. However, it was kind of still annoying. So long story short, the fighting system is very underbaked, and I don't really know what they were going for. I don't know how they thought that would be fun, not getting to really control what was happening, and just spamming A, and not getting to have much impact in the battles, and then making bosses ridiculously busted and damage sponges and incredibly annoying. One more thing to add for the battling and whatnot is that it requires so much grinding to upgrade your Crystarium, and the Crystarium is the upgrade method in this game. And I mean, another bad thing that it didn't really bother me all that much, because I was kind of using characters in specific roles anyway, is that everybody's Crystarium is basically the same. If they started with the same 3 paradigm, or same 3, what do the fuck you even call them? Same 3 roles, those are the same, no matter the character that you have. And then those characters, when they got the extra 3, those are the same. So basically, the characters are kind of exactly carbon copies of one another. The only difference is like their voices and the type of weapon that they use, and so it leads to a lack of originality, and you can kind of pick whoever the fuck you want and make it work. To me, that is a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, it didn't bother me all that much. I just kind of picked my favorite characters and ran with it. Now let's kind of move on to the story, because this kind of ties in with the gameplay aspect of it. I mean, in a decent way. Kind of the story is a connective tissue of the gameplay, or vice versa, whatever you want to think about it. But the way that they structured the story is the story into boring fights on rails into another cutscene, and they kind of just drop you in with no context, which sometimes can work if you're able to build the world around that without just fucking lore dumping, which unfortunately they have to do a lot of lore dumping, because they don't explain anything for the first couple chapters of the game, and you're just kind of expected to roll with it. We just meet our characters. It's almost, in a sense, like I think even low-level DMs like myself would have more of an idea of how to write the characters meeting in a better method than they do. It's so fucking annoying. So basically, the whole idea is that your characters were chosen by destiny to fulfill a very specific focus. And they picked the 6 very specific people, one of which that had technically already completed their focus and weren't. I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not going to spoil who that is. But also another person who was very close to being turned into Seath, because if you don't fulfill your focus, you end up becoming a Seath, which are these like crystallized monsters that wander in like purgatory and whatever for the rest of their thing. But the Lassie, who are the basically people chosen by the Fal'Cie, and I'm doing the sort of thing where I'm dropping a whole bunch of names on your head, and I felt like, what the fuck is going on for the longest time, because they don't really explain that until much later into the game when Fang joins the party. That's the only time you really get to know what's finally happening. And the fact that it takes so long for them to do that bothered me so much, because you had these cool ideas. You had this idea of this creator, this distant creator who created both the human race and the Fal'Cie, which are kind of like gods on the planet in the sense. I'm still kind of confused about the whole Fal'Cie shit, because they were called man-made gods, but then they're also gods that were created by the creator. I don't know, man. It's kind of just like, what? But anyway, they drop you in, and you don't know what the purge is. It takes a while for them to tell you what the purge is. What is a pulse Fal'Cie? What is a pulse Lassie? What is pulse? What is the sanctum? What are all of these things? It's just like they drop proper nouns on your head like some low tier sci-fi shit. And it's kind of what it is, I'm gonna be honest, but they kind of don't explain anything. And I think it's just a kind of like a very Square thing. It's just very like, you should know what this is sort of thing. That's kind of how it felt to me. It was just like, I'm gonna be honest, if I have to read data logs to understand your story, or understand what the fuck my place is in this story, you've done a bad job at telling your story. People do like that with like Dark Souls sort of shit, but like Dark Souls isn't intentionally like obfuscate things. They kind of like, it's not really that important to what you're doing right now, but you can go look into it and figure the story out if it interests you. With this game, it's like, no, we're just gonna kind of act like you should know what's going on, as if you were a part of this world already and have just been dropped into it with lightning blowing up a train. I did feel like really early in the game, and I still kind of think this, is that they tried to basically replicate Final Fantasy VII. They tried to remake, in a sense, not really remake, but like every character in Final Fantasy XIII kind of has their Final Fantasy VII analog, and that's also that's quite possibly possible throughout the entirety of the Final Fantasy series. You have these very specific characters that fulfill these very specific roles, which is kind of a fantasy trope. But I felt like very specifically, with being so familiar with Final Fantasy VII, that it kind of felt like they were trying to do that. Like, Lightning is obviously Cloud, but Lightning is far more annoying than Cloud, because Lightning is very, I'm better than everyone else, I'm not going to explain everything, and I'm going to try to do my own thing. Well, Cloud is just he's kind of like that, but he has a soft heart underneath all that. Vanille is either a total airhead, or she is also the smartest person ever. So she's kind of like a mix of Yuffie and Aerith in a weird way, and she kind of fulfills that Aerith role too. She doesn't die before Act 3 of the game and whatever like Aerith, but she fulfills that role in a very similar way. Saz is like Barrett. He's the comic relief, also the token black guy. I do like Saz though, because he feels like the most real character out of all of them. Fang is just hot. There's nothing beyond that for Fang. She's kind of an impetus and a crux in the story that kind of tells you everything that you should know, that they should have told you already. Much later when she joins, she's important for the final cutscene, but I also feel like she is completely useless outside of just being Vanille's like mentor in a sense. I know there's a lot of ships with Vanille and Fang, and I could see that, but I feel like she fills more of a mentor role. But even then, she doesn't do that, realistically. She's very, like, wishy-washy. Actually, all of the characters are very, very wishy-washy, in the sense where you have every character that kind of fulfills this role, and then they decide that they're going to change that up, and they just change. The characters just change. There's one event happens, and then they just change. There's no gradual progress of them learning and whatever, and they had enough time to do it. They padded the game long enough that they had enough time to make characters grow in a more natural way, but they don't. They just change. And a lot of them change around the time they get their Eidolon summons, except for Hope. Hope changes far before he gets his Eidolon summon. Vanille never really changes. Vanille is kind of the same the entire time. And I do like Vanille. I think, though, Saz is probably the best character. Hope is incredibly annoying at the beginning of the game. He's just hellbent on revenge, but also unreasonably so. He blames Snow for his mom's death, even though it wasn't Snow's fault. It's obviously the Sanctum's fault for attacking them. And his mom was fighting with Snow's group, and she died very early on. It's like first half of the first chapter, so it's not like a spoiler. It happens pretty quick, and so he wants to get revenge on Snow until Snow technically saves him and whatnot, because Snow kind of sort of has that anime thing where it's like, I accept you should do what you think is right, and if you need to kill me and whatever. And I mean that's a stupid character trope anyway. The one really good character thing that happens early on is that Lightning wants to channel Hope's anger in a sense toward a productive goal, and gives him her knife. And then she realizes, not long after giving him the knife, that, like, oh shit, this did not go the way I wanted it to. And that's a cool little aspect to it, is how she realizes that she made the mistake, and she, like, accidentally provoked more of the feeling that she was hoping to deter him away from. But other than that, until you get very late into the game, when it's like power of friendship bullshit, there's no real character development or growth. They're just, everybody's a very one-note trope, and they're not great characters. I will also say something that, aside from Sarah and Snow in a few places, I feel like the direction for the voice acting is not very good. Oh, I didn't even talk about Sarah. Well, I'll come back to voice acting. I should also talk about Sarah. Sarah is connected to both Snow and Lightning, and explains why Lightning treats Snow the way she does at the beginning, which, I mean, is also, like, kind of a whole thing. But also, they want you to care so bad about what happens in Chapter 2 to this girl you have never met. You know literally nothing about, because you don't learn Snow's, like, her relation in the story to anything until, like, she turns to Crystal, because she fulfilled her focus, technically. Being that she brought the party together. That's her focus, you learn later on in the game. But they really want you to care, as this girl you have never met is all of a sudden weak and whatever, and then turns to Crystal. It's just like, what? Why? You don't introduce this character to us at all, and we learn that is Snow's fiance. That's Lightning's sister. You could probably tell it's Lightning's sister just by her hair color. But it's like, it's so silly. It's just that they really want you to care, but you know, you don't. And then later on, they try to get you to care about some other minor characters, like Reigns, who, funny enough, you meet actually like once. You meet once on an airship. You see him randomly in a cutscene, but you don't know anything about the guy. And then once the whole party is gathered on the airship, then you meet him again. And basically, he's a guy that leads a part of the special forces of the military that runs Cocoon, which is I mentioned earlier, is the floating planets above the planet that is at war with the planet. Anyway, not important. Shinra type bullshit. Who basically is working with Fang and Snow in order to help them out, technically. And then later on, he, like, I have to do this or whatever, and I don't know, he technically fulfills his focus. I mean, because he turns to Crystal instead of turning into a Seath. So I don't know their explanation for that. I don't remember what his thing is supposed to be, but he tries to challenge us because he wants to put a stop to it so that we don't fulfill our focus, so that we do what we end up doing in the end. I don't know, man. This shit, it's kind of like, it's just like they tried, but they fail. The story doesn't make sense, and the characters don't make sense, and their motivations just do not make sense at all. And they also try to make you care about this other guy or whatever, who at the very end, I don't even remember his name, black robe, silver hair, is the guy who organized the purge or whatever. I didn't even talk about the purge, oh my god. But he organized the purge and whatever. And again, I'm dropping all these things, but the purge, basically they want to kill all the foul sea or whatever, or the l'Cie, in order to society, the public and whatever, and they're trying to keep a control on the public and everything like that and whatever. The Cocoon and Pulse had a war a long ass time ago. Then Ragnarok or whatever attacked Cocoon and destroyed the whole, like, made a big ass hole in the planet. We don't really get to know much more about that. I will say nothing more about the ending though, because the ending was super Persona-ish. It's like you and your band of misfits standing against some sort of god, even though it's not really a god. Me showing you this little bit from the end is not going to actually spoil anything for you, because you don't know what this thing is that we're fighting. It's just so funny how all of a sudden it's power of friendship shit and we're challenging a god, and you know, it's just batshit insane. It doesn't make any sense, but at the same time it's kind of like, I guess it kind of felt like it was leading to this, but you know. I do want to kind of go into the voice acting a little bit, and only because it feels like there was not enough direction in the actual voice acting, because you have a pretty good cast. Laura Bailey plays Sarah, you have Troy Baker who plays Snow, Ali Hillis who played Lightning, Vincent Martella who played Hope, and Vincent Martella is who plays Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. So you have like a really good selection of voice actors. I think the direction just wasn't good. I mean, Bailey and Baker, because like they're super high tier voice actors, and so they do perform this sort of anime style kind of well, but I don't feel like the direction was good enough for what they were actually trying to communicate, because some of the lines feel tone deaf and some of them feel like there's no stakes to what they're saying or anything like that. I mean, in a lot of ways it kind of sounds like normal people talking rather than like people acting, and in a way that can be good in certain cases, but in this case it was just not. The lip syncing for the in-engine cutscenes was not bad, especially like it was fucking 2009 this game came out, which is ridiculous. It looks amazing for a game from 2009. It's ridiculous, actually. I mean, I technically did play on a higher res monitor, but also like the game, even the cutscenes look really good. All these things look really good for when the game was made. Like, that's something. I mean, that's probably because the environments are so bare bones and mostly JPEGs. However, it's still, the game looks really good for how old it is. It was probably like groundbreaking graphics at the time, honestly. I think the music is pretty good. Honestly, most Final Fantasy music is bangers. I think they did a pretty good job with a lot of the music in this, and you'll be hearing a lot of it in the background for this video, as well as me like highlighting very specific tracks that I want to show you. But there's a lot of variety in the different types of tracks that they used. I mean, in some cases I felt like instrument choice in a few of the songs was a bit strange and whatnot, but the battle theme is good. I do like the battle theme. You hear the battle theme a lot, so that's a good thing. I know that the Chapter 6 boss theme, where I rage quit, did not fit the vibe of that fight, and it just did not fit how fucking mad. It probably made me madder, honestly. I do think that the English version of the actual sung track that they play at the end, and the promise also, because they replaced the vocal tracks for the Western releases with the English version of it, and I don't think it's bad. Frankly, I kind of like it. I actually think it kind of, to me, fits the vibe more than the Japanese version, and the Japanese version is not bad. I actually do like the Japanese version, but I don't think it was as big of a deal as people made it, that they replaced the music from the Japanese release to the Western release. I think the music in the Western release for the vocal tracks is fine. But I'll pick a couple tracks for you. The battle theme is the main one that I want to show you, and I'll pick 2 or 3 others. that, I'm gonna kind of wrap this up here. It's funny how I have recorded less time than I did that time when I rage quit, which is really funny. I think there are a couple things that I missed, like the fact that it took to chapter 7 to actually start getting interesting, because they actually finally started explaining shit, and that they really could have compressed the first 7 chapters into, I don't remember how long it was. I think it was like 13, 14 hours up to that point. You could have compressed it down into 4. And I think that's the biggest sin of the game is the padding. Is how much they want you to spend grinding and whatnot without much payoff for it, because you don't get to use new abilities aside from click A, which in some games, in some JRPGs, that makes it works. Like it is interesting when you I hate to make another Persona comparison, but like when you get deeper into that game and you start merging personas and then you make personas that you want, you can specifically engineer your personas to have very specific skills on them. And I feel like that's really interesting. And then you can also use your turn-based RPG to boost certain characters or nerf your enemies so that certain other characters can do more damage. Like I remember my Reaper strategy in Persona 3 Reload, when we basically super boosted Aegis, and then Aegis just wailed on the guy. I mean, that was cool. I really liked being able to do that and being able to employ a strategy that I had actual control over, aside from hitting A or left bumper to switch a paradigm. I feel like the biggest thing is the padding and the gameplay. Like those are the 2 biggest things for me that they could have used to better explain characters and better develop characters and build deeper connections between the characters. And maybe that will happen in like 13.2 or 13 or Lightning Returns. Again, I don't know why they felt the need to make 2 sequels. I'm going to see what they're like, of course, because I own them and I completed 13, so I might as well continue. But like, they ended it at actually like a very good note. They should have just ended 13 there and not made any sequels to it, because unless they completely fix the game. I will say there are a lot of like plot devices in the sense of why all the characters meet up at a very specific point, or specifically the 4 characters that do, and then it gets seen on the news by the other 2, and then eventually they all just somehow come together. But also the fact that the party even comes together in the way that it does, when only a couple chapters earlier, when they had been together for a little bit and then they split up again, where Lightning and Hope just left Saz and Vanille, and like they did not really consider each other friends. They did not care about each other. Hope and Vanille knew each other from the beginning part, and then they also knew Snow, and Lightning knew Snow, and then Saz didn't know anybody. He just met Lightning on the train and decided to stick it out with them. And then Fang appears because she knows Vanille, so Vanille is kind of the only real connective thread between most of the characters. And even then, it's like, it's very loose, and it's like, it kind of doesn't make sense how they came together. With the analogs that I drew between these characters and Final Fantasy VII, Cloud knew Tifa and was hired by them to do quote-unquote terrorist actions in the sense of blowing up Shinra's reactors and things like that. So he was known by them also being already a mercenary and doing more work and things like that. So I don't know. They just had to lore dump way too many times when they could have more organically built the world around you as you were going, because we were in a sense kind of like the characters in a good, not in a good way. We were like the characters and not knowing what the goal was, in the sense like our characters needed to figure out what the dream that they had meant, what their focus was, but we were in the same boat as them and not knowing until like we don't learn later on. The randomness of the events that occur and the randomness of the locales that they put the characters in, it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like, why are we doing this? Why are we here? It doesn't make a cohesive story. It's just kind of random. It's just like, well, we need to put these characters in a new environment, so here, let's make a futuristic jungle, like a metal futuristic jungle filled with a bunch of animals that for some reason Hope and Hope and Lightning are in, you know? I mean, it made a bit more sense for Saz and Vanille because they were going to a specific city, but either way. And then Nautilus doesn't. I didn't even talk about Nautilus, but Nautilus is not literally just not important. It is a straight line. It is a gold saucer equivalent, but it is just a straight line. all in all, they kind of just squandered all the good ideas that they had for the game, and all of the cool set pieces and imagery and ideas that they had, and they just squandered it by making a game that I think I don't know anything. I would love to see some like devlogs or what happened with Final Fantasy XIII, because I know people don't like it. I don't know, man. This game is weird because they were so close. They had it. They had it. They just had to not rush it, I feel like. And I feel like that was the biggest issue. They did not have cohesiveness, and they just decided to fill that cohesiveness with padding, so you just have people maybe forget about what they were supposed to be doing, or the holes in the story or whatever. But anyway, I don't want to say that I recommend this game, but also it is an interesting playthrough if you were interested in it yourself. I know I gave a hard time to the gameplay because the gameplay is not fun. However, it's fascinating. It's definitely different than anything I've ever played. And it feels like that they just took Final Fantasy XII's combat and made it worse. In a sense, maybe I recommended it because at the end of the game, I smiled at the ending of the game and felt almost a little bit emotional because of how much effort I had put into, you know, forcing myself to finish this damn game. So maybe there's something to it. There's some little bit of charm amongst all the flaws. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Did appreciated. Make sure to subscribe for more. And Ball Tandarus is the most generic fantasy name I have ever heard. Thanks for watching.